Hi, I'm Peter Strohkorb. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Let's talk about your sales funnel. Well, let's talk about selling first and then about the sales funnel. So I'm planning to give you a bit of an introduction on what's the latest in that regard. And in future broadcasts, I might drill down on the individual components and help you to sell smarter, not harder, which is my motto, as you can see down the bottom here. All right, so let's talk about sales and how we want to sell. Just turn the phone down so we won't get interrupted. Thank you very much. And let's think about how you as a buyer would like to be sold to. Would you like to receive unsolicited emails about something that you are not in the market for? Do you enjoy receiving cold calls from people who have no idea whether you're buying the thing that they're selling, whether you're even interested in buying the thing that they're selling? And last but not least, do you enjoy somebody connecting with you on LinkedIn only under some pretext saying, we've got so many contacts in common, so let's connect? And only for when you then say, oh, okay, I'm going to connect with them, for them to then hit you up with a sales pitch. And the Americans have a great term for that, which I'm using now, and it's called pitch slapping. You're being pitch slapped on LinkedIn if somebody reaches out to you and says, gotcha, now buy my stuff. Okay, so having got that out of the way, I think we all agree that that's not a great way to endear yourself to a new client or prospect and to win their business. So the question is, why are we doing it? And the answer is we've been doing it for 123 years, and it's just the way that we're used to. So the sales funnel that you're probably using today, the one where you put leads into the top, they get nurtured, then they get advanced, and eventually, ka-ching, ka-ching, a deal drops out. That sales funnel was originally invented in 1898. It's around the same time as the first motor car came out. Around the same time as Matisse, Henri Matisse, that painting behind me, that year he got married. So we're talking about quite a while ago, and we're still using that same model that is totally inward facing, totally looking at what we want to sell and how we want to sell it and how we want to measure progress through the sales funnel. And the customer or the buyer almost becomes an afterthought. It doesn't even get mentioned. So what I've been doing is I've been doing quite a bit of thinking about that old model not applying today's market anymore and to today's buyer anymore. As we discussed right at the beginning, we don't want to be pitch slapped anymore. Buyers, if they have a need or they discover that they have a need, they go online, they do their research, and they decide when they're ready to talk to a sales rep. And they also decide which reps from which organization they're going to talk to. So the control of the sales process has actually shifted over the years from the seller that used to have all the knowledge and the information that the buyer needed to make a decision, to the buyer who now has all the information at their fingertips and they can do their own research in their own time and they can make their own decisions in terms of when they're ready, when they feel ready, and which vendor or which seller they're going to talk to. So what can we do as sellers to make the buying experience more pleasant for the buyer and help the buyer to buy from us? What we need to do is we need to turn around and say, hey, what does our sales process, what does our sales funnel look like from the buyer's perspective? And how can we shape it so that it helps the buyer to buy from us? So away goes unsolicited, ambush-like outreaches that bash the buyer over the head and say, buy from us. That whole idea of engaging with, jumping out of the bushes at the buyer, hitting them with a sales pitch, and then handling their objections, that is the traditional sales funnel, right? And that model is so adversarial, like we're on opposite sides of the table. I'm trying to get you to do a transaction. You're trying to resist me. I'm trying to convince you with objection handling techniques. That's all very adversarial. And it's not the way that buyers want to buy today. What buyers want is somebody to, figuratively speaking, put their arms around the shoulders of the buyer and says, look, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, it's a big bad world out there. Let me help you make an informed buying decision. I'll say that again. Let me help you to make an informed buying decision. In the back of my mind, of course, I'm thinking, let me help you make an informed buying decision to buy from me. That last bit is very important. So, what does a sales funnel need to look like that's buyer focused? So let's look at it step by step. Of course, we still need to know who our ideal buyers are, their persona, where they hang out, what they do and what their objectives are. 2, we need to know where they hang out. Where can we find them? Where can we get to them? 3, critical 3. When we do get to them, how do we not just surprise them and ambush them and attack them and pitch them and sell to them? How do we engage them and draw them into a business conversation? Not necessarily a sales conversation, but a business conversation that makes them want to engage with us. And that's really the most critical step, and the one that most sellers get wrong today, because they think that they can solve the whole problem of buyers having gone away and not wanting to be ambushed anymore. They can solve that with quantity. So, let's just put 100,000 more contacts into a spam engine. Let's make 100 calls a day, not just 50 calls a day. Let's connect with more people on LinkedIn. So more is just more. More is not better. And to do more of something that we know is already not working is just not very clever. So how does it work? How can we work? How do we make it successful? Well, I say there's 3 ways that you can engage a prospect that is fairly senior in the organization, more likely to be either a decision maker or at least an influencer. When we're selling something that's a bit longer sales cycle, a bit higher in value, and maybe a more complex a sale, we're likely to deal with a senior executive buyer, and maybe quite likely actually with a whole committee of executive buyers who all take a different perspective on the thing that we're selling and that the thing that they're buying. So a financial buyer will look at time to payback, internal rate of return, ROI, that sort of thing. So when you reach out to them, you need to talk about those things. When you reach out to a technical buyer, say a CIO or IT manager, you want to address them in the terms that they're looking at your product or service, in the sense that they might say, well, what does the support look like? If, or more likely, when something goes wrong, how will you support us? How will you remediate the situation, and how will you help us to get back on track? A end user buyer might think about, well, how steep is my learning curve going to be? Is it easy to adopt, or will it take a long time to come to grips with this thing? So you can see that the different people, decision makers, influencers, buyers in that buying committee will look at the same solution with a different lens, and we need to be ready to address each of them individually with the way that they're looking at our solution and our product and our service. So how can we engage them into a business conversation right from the start? Now imagine you're a buyer and you get bombarded with unsolicited sales pitches every day. You're a bit hesitant to take another call. How can we make sure that they take your call, they read your email, or they make your connection request, accept your connection request and want to talk to you? The secret in doing that is in not pitching to them at the very first point of contact. The secret in the success of engaging them into a business conversation is in intriguing them at the first point of contact, getting them curious, making them lean forward and say, wow, Peter, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more about that. Because the minute that they've said, tell me more, they have actually, whether they realize it or not, but they have actually at that point given you their permission for you to sell to them, not before. So we need to earn the right to sell first. So how, then the question becomes, how do we intrigue them? And I say there's only 3 ways that you can intrigue a senior buyer. And that is, 1, by making them aware of an opportunity that they did not know they had. So you helping them to with an incident of where they can look good in the eyes of their boss, where they can achieve their objectives, they can hit their KPIs, they can achieve their quota, whatever their objectives are. So helping them to understand that they have an opportunity that they did not know existed. 2 is the opposite of that, and that is to help them to understand that they are facing a risk that they're not aware of, a risk they did not know they're facing. Because if you can help them make a mistake, if you can help them to avoid making a mistake, then that's valuable to them. So they will be interested and want to know more about that. But those 2 are pretty hard to pull off. So you need to do your research. You need to do your research on the industry, on the organization, and maybe even on the buyer to understand enough about them to know what they are still not aware of in terms of either an opportunity or a risk. It can be done, but it's hard work. But there is a 3rd way. And that is to help them to understand and to help them to discover, in fact, to help them to discover that they have a need for the thing that you're selling. How do you do that? Well, you use a bit of challenger, provocative thinking, and you talk about a subject where they might initially slightly disagree, or where they initially might agree and then find that they're actually wrong. So again, you've got to do your research about the organization, the industry, and maybe even the person, but you can use that insight that you've discovered and scale it up. You can apply it to any number of prospects and ideal buyer personas that you want to engage with. So, for example, in my business, what I do is I talk about the buyer-focused sales funnel, the one where you turn around and you say, what does our sales funnel actually look like from a buyer's perspective? And you can go to my website at peterstrohkorb.com and you can do a free sales funnel assessment. Why do I offer that? Well, it's for you to start thinking about the concept of, hey, maybe my current sales funnel is actually a bit dated now, seeing that it's 123 years old. But also, here's a way to think about how we could do better. I'm interested in having a look at that. And specifically, I'm interested to know how that would apply to my situation, my organization, and my business. So I'm offering this free self-assessment because it's a self-assessment so that my prospects can self-discover that they may have a need for the thing that I'm selling, and they may want to then talk to me about their current situation versus the ideal future situation, and what can we do to go from A to B, for example. So help them to understand or help them to discover for themselves that they have a need for the thing that you're selling. So after we've engaged them, we will likely not be the only vendor in the race to a sale. There'll be any number of other vendors who are vying for the same deal. So I teach my clients then how we can eliminate or fend off our competitors in a way that does not badmouth them. We don't say a bad thing about any of them, and we don't grandstand ourselves either. We use a certain technique that I teach my buyers, and I'll be talking about that in a future broadcast. We talk to them about, we raise a subject that other vendors will avoid talking about. And by us proactively bringing that up, we will actually psychologically put ourselves on the same side as our buyer, and we will, again, figuratively, of course, put our arms around the shoulders and say, look, let us help you to make an informed buying decision. Then it comes time to submit a proposal. And I always say that it's really super important what goes into your proposals, of course. But pretty much just as important as what goes into the proposal is the way that you present your proposal. Now, I'm not talking about a tender situation here, that's a different story, but one where somebody says, hey, Peter, can you send me a proposal? So the next thing you do after somebody says, can you send me a proposal, is super critical to the success of your proposal seeing the light of day. And I'll teach my clients, and I might again talk about that in a future broadcast, how to do that. The next thing is you've won the deal. Of course, you're delivering a superior customer experience so that your buyer will come back for more and give you more business, repeat business. So I'll teach my clients how they can do that. And last not least, you want to then have a way to turn your repeat customers into champions and advocates for your business who refer new customers and new business to you. And again, there's a way that you do that, and we're basically talking about referral sales, and there's a way to ask for referrals. There's a time when to ask for a referral, and the trigger point you need to look out for and listen out for. And then thirdly, of course, there's a way that you need to structuralize and procedurize referral selling so that you can measure it and you can scale it. So these are the 10 points in the buyer-focused sales funnel. And if you like to test your sales funnel for yourself, then I'll just put that into the chat box here, and you can click on the link and do that for yourself at peterstrohkorb.com /sales-assessment. So with that was an introduction to the buyer-focused sales funnel. I hope I was able to give you a bit of food for thought on how you're selling today and how your buyers want to buy from you instead. And whether there's something that you and we can talk about in terms of how would that apply to your business, how would that apply to your selling, and how would that apply to your selling success. So with that, I'll leave you to it. Have a great afternoon, evening, night, morning. And I'm Peter Strohkorb. Sell smarter, not harder. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.